live long and prosper. So in this video series, I'm going to be talking through the social justice elements of every episode of the original series of Star Trek. The thing that inspired this project was actually a Fox News article which argued that Star Trek has in some way betrayed its traditional commitment to sort of political neutrality or middle ground by embracing progressive politics. In this series, we're going to see that Star Trek has always embraced progressive politics, and it's always been aspirational for social justice in various senses. I am taking a broad perspective on social justice here, so that may include multiple different types of social justice, whether that's racial, whether that's economic, whether that's religious, whether that's abilities, gender and sexuality, anything broadly considered. I will go through every episode. Some of the episodes I will interview fellow Trekkies and talk with them about it. And then below, in the descriptions, I will give you additional information about the episodes, particularly their original air date, who wrote the screenplay, and who directed that episode. I also want to dedicate this series to my dad, Michael Allen Zapkin. He was an OG Trekkie from back in the day, and it was watching the original series with him that I came to love Star Trek. In this video, we're going to talk about the episode, What Are Little Girls Made Of? So in this episode, the Enterprise goes to an icy planet called Exo-3 in search of the scientist Roger Corby, who happens to be Nurse Christine Chapel's ex-fiancé. Corby landed on the planet 5 years earlier. The last contact with him had been 2 years after that, so 3 years prior to the Enterprise's arrival. Since then, 2 expeditions had been unable to find him, but the Enterprise is making a third check, and they get a transmission from him. So, yay! Yeah, so Roger Corby's alive. And so he asks that Kirk comes down to the planet alone. Kirk brings Christine Chapel with him. And basically he also beams down 2 security guys. So they go down into these caves to find Roger Corby. Both security guys get mysteriously deaded. Murdered as we the audience know, but as Kirk does not know. Doesn't know immediately. He finds out fairly quickly, but you know. So you've got the 2 security guys. Brown, who's one of the other researchers, threatens Kirk with a phaser, at which point Kirk shoots Brown, and he's all like, "My insides are all mechanical. Oh, my skin has been blasted open, and I'm an android who's now dead." So, I mean, that was a bad impression of Brown, because he basically just lays on the floor with his skin ripped open and mechanical bits all visible. And we learned that Brown was an android. Oh! We also learned that Bloch, who's a giant dude in a weird robe, played, incidentally, by the same guy who played Lurch on The Addams Family back in the 60s, who was from West Virginia. Interesting tidbit. At any rate, Bloch is also an android. And Andrea, this beautiful girl that is also there, is also an android. Just androids all the way down. Chock-a-block with androids. Can't move for them. So, Roger Corby is basically like, "Listen, Kirk, androids are awesome. There's a lot of them around here, and we can android it up. Like, it's great. All these great discoveries." Kirk's like, this is nuts. You're nuts. Let's not be doing any of this. I'm going to be going now. And Roger Corby and Brock are like, you're not going to be going. Instead, we're going to turn you into an android. And so they strap Kirk naked to the machine that makes an android, which apparently mostly just involves rotating it around really, really quickly. Interesting fun fact, apparently, for this episode, the producers decided that Kirk should not have a hairy chest, and so they shaved William Shatner's chest, and he was not pleased with that. Like, he was apparently a big opponent of having his chest shaved. Fun fact, take it to cocktail parties. Do what you will with it. But they make an android of Kirk, who has the exact same mental patterns as Kirk, except Kirk outwits them. Because what he does is he manages to build in a little message for Spock to let Spock know that everything is not as it should be. In that, as Corby is duplicating Kirk's mental patterns, Kirk focuses on he focuses on the phrase, "Mind your own business, Mr. Spock. I'm sick of your half-breed interference, do you hear?" And so, when the android is later sent up to the Enterprise to figure out where they can take Roger Corby and the android-making machine in order to continue his experiments / transformation of people into androids, Spock is like, "Hey, Captain, let's have a fun little chat, as we're wont to do, considering that we're friends." And Android Kirk, without even realizing that it's a weird thing to have said, says that line that human Kirk had been focusing on when that neural transfer was done, or that neural duplication was done. And Spock, who does recognize that that's a weird thing the Captain doesn't normally say, is like, I'm gonna call security, and after the Captain has beamed back down to the planet, we're gonna go down there and see what the fuck is going on. So, the plan, again, is basically for Roger Corby to go to some other planet, start turning people into androids, etc., etc. Kirk manages to convince Brock that Corby does not have his best interests in mind, that human beings are fundamentally irrational, unpredictable, etc., etc., and for Brock and his machine mind, his machine consciousness, that represents an existential threat. And so Brock attempts to destroy Roger Corby. Corby shoots Brock, etc., etc. Kirk makes out with Andrea and, like, kisses emotions into her, which is not how machines work. Like, you can't make out with a computer and give it emotions, but apparently Kirk can, in a way that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. But she becomes emotionally conflicted, despite the fact that she is programmed to not have any emotions. She then kills Android Kirk, thinking it's regular Kirk, when Android Kirk is like, "No, I will not make out with you." Then she is all like... So, they find out that Roger Corby himself is an android, but, like, a better android than Brown was, and a different kind of android than Andrea was, because Andrea was just an android built out of, like, whatever, and they gave her a sort of blank-ish personality. But Roger Corby actually transferred his consciousness, his soul, from his crippled, frozen body into an android body. He attempts to convince Christine that he's still human. He's still Roger Corby. And what becomes really striking about that is that when he sets about trying to like give her ways she could test him, they're the ways you would test a computer. It's like, he's like, ask me to solve, and then he realizes that's a computer program. He's like, ask me to calculate. So all of the things that he's able to come up with to try and prove that he's human are the kinds of things that a computer would do, the kinds of problems or the kinds of evidence that a computer would offer. And so, Andrea is in love with Roger Corby, apparently, and Roger Corby is like, oh, I'm not human anymore. My immortality as an android has cost me my humanity. And so Andrea goes and, like, makes out with Corby, and Corby grabs the phaser that she's holding and kills them both. At which point, Spock shows up, and Kirk's like, well, Roger Corby was never here. It was all a big misunderstanding. Let's all go back to the ship and travel on our merry way. So, what are the social justice themes here? Well, I think the big social justice concern for me is biomechanical engineering. And that's an interesting one because, on the one hand, there are concerns about, like, grafting technology onto human beings in ways that are potentially dehumanizing. And that's a very abstract concept. But there's a guy named Yuval Noah Harari, who is an Israeli historian and social theorist, and he actually has written about the problematic components of biohacking. And I mean, there's an idea of, like, biohacking that I think is connected to, like, optimizing one's health and things like this through technology and through the use of apps and things like this. But what Harari talks about is biohacking in the sense of biopolitics. So biopolitics goes back to Michel Foucault, and it's basically this idea of controlling life, controlling what it means to be living, that life itself becomes the object of political power. And so, for Harari, the risk is that in the same way that our digital data through algorithms, what videos you view on YouTube, what you search on Google, what you look at on Facebook, what pages you follow, what news articles you read, etc., all of this data, we know, is collected up by big tech companies and used in algorithms to program what kinds of things we see, what kinds of information is presented to us, what sorts of Google results come up first, what sorts of YouTube videos are recommended to us, etc., etc. What Harari says is that, particularly as we become more and more reliant on technology, particularly things like Fitbits and other health tracking apps, that either big tech or governments or hackers could access that data and can start to understand, can start to assess us on a biological level. So some of these things might be somewhat innocuous. For instance, if your heart rate is up, if you are perspiring more than usual, they could send you an advertisement on your phone for, hey, Gatorade's on sale at this location near you, something like that. Now, that's creepy. It's not necessarily harmful, But there are a lot of ways in which biohacking of the kind that Harari is talking about can be incredibly problematic. I'm filming this shortly after the Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade case here in the US, and one of the big things that a lot of people have started recommending is getting off period tracking apps. That's apparently a big thing that a lot of women use to help track their menstrual cycles. The concern is that that data could be used in court to try and establish that a woman became pregnant and then was no longer pregnant. And under some of the state laws that have taken effect, women can conceptually be prosecuted for miscarriages. And so that biological data that's held within that app could be used to prosecute. That's a very legitimate concern right now. And so this is the kind of this is a big issue with biomechanization, right? Is that technology is only to a certain extent controlled by the user. That there are other people, other organizations that can gather that data, that can use that data, or that can manipulate that biotechnology. Now, at the same time, it is worth noting that there are existing a lot of biotech things, biomedical technological advances. I wear glasses. This is a very, very old biotech advancement, but it is the use of a machine. It is the use of a tool to improve the biological functioning of my body. The same thing with hearing aids, cochlear implants, pacemakers. These are all things, and of course, that becomes a big concern then. Like, if you have biohacking and you have a pacemaker, if someone can hack into that and shut off your pacemaker, then someone could kill you technologically. They could kill you with a computer, in theory. So again, these are some of the big concerns that I think this idea of let's turn people into androids, we can have immortality by importing our consciousness into machines. I think it raises these kinds of concerns.